Okay.
All right, I'm here today with Ivan Wallace.
Wallace.
And you were you born here in Ellsinore or nearby?
Actually, Williamsville.
Williamsville. Were you born at home?
Pardon?
Were you born at home?
No, I was born at the Lucy Lee Hospital in Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Okay.
The only child. I have two siblings. They were both born at home near Williamsville.
Are they older?
They're younger.
Younger. Wow. Now, were your parents from the area?
My parents?
Parents.
Yeah, my dad was always from Williamsville. I have some of the Wallace history here.
Okay.
Where my grandfather came from Kentucky in 1880 with brothers and sisters. But my mother was a child of Slovakian immigrants. And my grandfather stowed away on his ship up in the Baltic, came over, worked. I think he had relation over here, sent passage back for my mother, for my grandmother and one son. And I know my grandmother Abigail arrived in Boston in 1902. Somehow or another, my mother was born in Kewanee, Wisconsin, lived in Columbus, Ohio, and then she told me that folks were hearing that there was nice, cheap farm ground down in this area, and that's how her family ended up just very near to where my dad grew up in about 5 miles west of Williamsville.
Okay. And do you know about what year she ended up there?
My grandmother?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my mother was born in 1914, so I would say, let's see, she got to Boston in 1902, my mother was born in Kewanee, Wisconsin, they lived in Columbus, Ohio. It would have been probably before, somewhere around 1920, I would suppose.
Okay. Now, I don't think I caught the year and date of your birth.
A long time ago. August 12, 1936.
Oh, that's nice. Cool. And so you went to school in the Williamsville area?
I started out going to school at the Lone Star School. That's one of those, that's my friend Russ.
Oh, okay. Hi, Russ.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Russ.
Hey, Ive.
I'm filming, but you're welcome to grab a seat there. Just move anything you need to.
Hey, she's interviewing me here, Russ. So.
And if you know anything about QR codes and smartphones, there's QR codes that explain things. Do you know what a QR code is?
A what?
A QR code. See those little squares on the wall?
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay. Well, you live up closer to the city, so city people seem to know about QR codes.
Yeah.
Big advancements.
I take pictures of them with my iPhone, yeah. And have trouble knowing how to pick them up on my computer.
I think I have the same trouble. So that was something that one of our board members instituted. I know John, when he worked at the art museum has QR codes. So I know how to point and it comes up immediately, but I guess I really don't know how to use them when you take a picture. But I think if you save it and then copy it and put it in like Google, I think it'll come up.
Okay.
All right, back to,
Okay.
You were telling me about the Wallace family.
Yeah, I have I think it's kind of an interesting paper here. It was an exercise that my cousin, Lou Ellen Keenan, who married a tailor later, wrote about my grandfather's trip from Kentucky in 1880 when he was 14 years old.
Wow.
And talks about the trip, how they, it's kind of interesting here. She says that Grandpa reported that they could have probably have bought the land that Big Springs is on in Van Buren for almost nothing at that time. So anyway, then Grandpa's siblings all sort of settled down around closer to Williamsville, Little Brushy Creek, Big Brushy Creek, and some of them are, there's a few distant cousins that are still down there. But if you want to make copies of this, you can, but it's mainly about the Wallace history.
Yes, I will be interested in doing that.
All right.
So, I think John told me that you knew some history about that stone building. Is it an artesian well? That's out A Highway.
The stone building.
It's a little, like a...
Is it down near Williamsville?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my grandfather's and grandmother Wallace. That's where they were married and raised 7 children. 2 of the girls died young in their 20s. But that was a spring house.
Mm-hmm.
Just about every home site had a spring. And I can remember that spring house. That's where you had a box in there and you kept your milk and eggs and things like that, butter, cool. And at one time there was another building just like that, just towards Williamsville on that side of the house that looked just like it, but it was their smokehouse for smoking hams and so on. Yeah, and that's now owned by Mike Huffman.
Okay.
Mike Huffman owns my grandfather Wallace's old farm, the farm I was born on, and my grandmother Abathy's, where my mother grew up, that farm. We found some interesting things about historic Williamsville. It's a group, and I found the 1930 graduation class. There were 5 members.
Oh, wow.
And my father was valedictorian. He never told me that. And then there's a picture that group has of the 1933 Williamsville class, and Eva Abathy, my mother, is pictured in that, but there's nothing but the picture, no information on who did what.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. My friend Russ here, it's interesting that D.O. Kreitz, my 5th and 6th grade teacher, came back, it must have been many years later, and was a substitute teacher that in Russ's class. And after that, he probably never taught school again. But
Now, is that Viola's husband?
I don't know who D.O. Kreitz's wife was.
Okay.
Remember, he had, I think, 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, I believe. But
Okay.
the Kreitz was a pretty well-known family, and they lived out west of here on Highway 60. What do they call that? Kreitz Corner, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They're on, as I
Okay.
remembered, on the old highway. And my Uncle Glenn, who married my dad's oldest sister, Ida, lived right, let's see, if you go right, next intersection, before you cross it, the house on the left is gone. That was my Uncle Glenn King's house. And they had Laddie Wallace, who was superintendent of East Carter for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a brother who was a teacher, and they had 3 girls. And nearly all of them went to high school here at Ellsinore.
I remember the Kenyon house. I used to own the house right next to it.
Oh, did you?
And it had a cistern right in the middle of the house where you could
Yeah, that's
get,
handy.
yeah, that was real handy.
my grandfather and grandmother, after they sold the farm and they retired, their home was right beside this C-store here. The front door was on the street behind it, it runs behind it. And I lived, when we left the farm, I guess in 1944, probably, my dad decided that farming wasn't gonna be good because the war was over and we'd have another recession and he was gonna go back to teaching school. So we lived up on the hill here near the water tower. And we also lived over down this section, they called it Dogtown at that time. And then somehow or another we moved back down pretty close to the original farm where I was born.
So was Dogtown the area that's across on the other side of the creek?
Yeah, if you the road, if you see, is just after you cross the creek,
You can make a left.
Yeah, and went down there.
Mary Jo, I think you guys know Mary Jo, Belle, but she was a Russell and her grandma's house was down there.
Oh, I remember there was very few houses. It's really built up now.
Yes.
I can't remember who our neighbors were down there. My dad's older.
What was the boy? What was that? Boy?
Pride?
What was his name?
Pride?
No, the Russell boy. What was it?
Oh, I don't remember.
Jay Russell.
Yeah, Jay,
I remember.
yeah, I think that's Mary Jo's brother and he's married to Jenny.
Jenny McKinnon.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
The postmaster was a PG Wingo.
Yes, I never, well, I did it. No, is PG the one that, I know he was a postmaster. Was he married to Elizabeth? Was that his wife?
I just knew the kids. There was a Carol Sue Wingo and a Eugene Wingo that I remember going to school with.
Did PG work as a missionary at one time?
I don't know.
Because there was a Wingo and it was Elizabeth's husband, and I'm thinking it was PG Wingo, but I could be wrong.
He would have been gone a long time ago. I just remember that he was always at the window rolling his smokes from Prince Albert and had a cup of coffee. And yeah, I remember Orrin Tucker was the auctioneer. We kept his racehorse, or no, I mean his riding horse. He had a 5-gated mare, and we kept that horse one summer down on our little farm, and that's I rode like a cowboy on that. She was a mare, but otherwise I don't have. I do know the town had some pretty rowdy people at times. I think there were some shootings. But I've always called that, what's now, that where Mr. Huffman owns now, I've always thought of that as home. And had a very interesting experience. Just couple Saturdays ago. My brother passed away, he was younger than me, a year ago in August, and his oldest grandson wanted to come back over and see where his grandfather, my brother, grew up. So we drove over across the bridge that Mr. Huffman built, knocked on his door, and had a great meeting.
Oh, that's
Got to
great.
go in the house. I actually saw my brother born. Well, my grandmother delivered him. My mom's mom delivered him in the corner room of that house on February 16th, 1941. I was 4.5 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. But otherwise, Ellsinore, as I remember, is usually, I think several people that are retired were living here even when I was a youngster going to school. People worked in the timber business, farmed. Uh, most of us were, I think, reasonably poor. I can remember kids that their parents actually took them out of school in the fall, and they all went down south and picked cotton because the schools down there had a cotton vacation, and they went to school, and they had two vacations. They took one in the spring when they put the crop in, and they took another one in the fall when they harvested it. And this was one of the only ways some of the folks I remember had of getting a little bit of cash in their pocket. The whole family would go down and pick cotton.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now on your farm, what kind of things did you raise?
Corn. I remember coming home from the Lone Star School and jumping up in the wagon, although it didn't need to. The old horses, they just clucked to them, and my dad was on one side, and my grandpa on the other, pulling the corn off of the stalks and throwing them in the wagon.
Wow.
Hay, mainly hay. When we moved over on Big Brushy, that farm ground was better. I think, I don't remember, I think we raised wheat and corn and maybe some soybeans. We had some cattle, beef cattle that they shipped for money. Raised hogs. My mom always we had chickens. My mom always had a big garden. We had fruit trees. We had strawberry patch, like just about everybody else. And my mother canned, like a lot of other folks, she canned meat, she canned vegetables, and I can remember a big crock of lard that they would keep left like the pork in it, and she'd pull that out of there and fry it up.
I'm curious because the modern girls that are homesteading, they do something like with the eggs that they call water glass, where they put them in a lime. They don't wash them. They get the real clean eggs, don't wash them, and then they put them in a lime mixture and put them in a cool, dark place. They keep that without refrigeration. Did your mom do anything like that?
As I remember, the eggs were kept in the spring house.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another thing that foraging. Do you know what foraging is?
Where you turn the cattle or the animals loose and let them go out in the woods?
No, but that's foraging for them. It's where people are actually finding out that there's a lot of things out in the woods and fields that people can eat. And so they're using that now. I don't know if you knew Myrtle Brown. She lived out V Highway.
I do remember going with my grandmother Wallace to pick huckleberries. And it took forever to get a gallon of huckleberries. They're like a blueberry, only they're small little guys. But boy, they're good.
No, they're using beauty berries, those purplish pink berries. They are kind of a natural sweet. Yeah. And a few weekends ago, I made homemade bagels with a combination of cattail flour and 50% acorn flour. But there's a whole process to get the tannins out of the acorn so they're not bitter. And the bagel tasted like a regular bagel. It was interesting. But they're using a lot of these wild plants. Now, Myrtle Brown and Obie Carter, I don't know if you knew Obie.
I knew some Carters. I remember Cozy Carter was one of the gentlemen that I knew had children. And let's see, I remember the Carter girl that married Clyde Carnahan. They both worked for Glenn Van Dyke over here. I think maybe they might have owned the store later. I remember the congressman, A.S.J. Carnahan, when he wasn't in Washington, D.C., he was superintendent over here. I was telling Russ yesterday, he found out we both had D.O. credits. But I remember sitting in my sixth grade desk, and D.O. had his feet up on the desk asleep when Mr. Carnahan brought some kind of an official by from the state education department.
Oh my.
And they just looked in, and when D.O. woke up, he told us that he had been caught. See, I remember the Manus family, I guess there's still some Manuses around.
Yes, there is.
I don't know whether there's any Condrys left or not. There was Cecil Ray and Mo, and I forget what the youngest one was, but I know Ray passed away a long time ago. But there was Albert and Sonny Moreland. Ray Moreland had the store. Trying to think of some of the other folks that.
Did your mom collect any medicinal herbs?
No, not to my knowledge. So let's see. Of course, we gathered when it was mushroom time. We picked up, what are they called, morels or something?
Morels, yes,
Yeah.
those are great.
They're good. Let's see. But I can't remember.
No, that's okay, because the older ladies that have passed on now, it seems like everybody knew what morels were, but as far as using a lot of the other mushrooms, the other older ladies that I knew did not. And like I said, the only things that I really remember them collecting out in the wild were things that you would use medicinally, which dandelions grow everywhere, but dandelion root was one that they used quite a bit of.
Okay, sassafras roots.
Sassafras tea.
Because I remember, I guess in the spring, dug those roots up and washed them and made sassafras tea.
Oh, I love sassafras
And
tea.
I remember my grandfather Wallace saying that was good for you because it thinned your blood after your blood thickened during the winter.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know whether that happened or not, but it tasted good.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, well, thank you for this interview, and I definitely want to look at those papers and make some copies.
Yeah.